There once was a time where Tony Hawk dominated every form of media he could, from television and YouTube to the one that stuck out the most to me being video games. No one had ever come close to the cultural impact until EA came around and got their grubby little fingers mixed in and gave us one of the best, if not the best, skateboarding video game franchises to ever exist. And it still lingers its little head around the corner every time anything skateboarding related is brought up in the video game industry. And there has been the never-ending question of which franchise really holds the mantle. Which franchise comes out on top? Which sweeps all categories and puts the other one to shame? And that's one of the most difficult questions to answer, because the truth is that neither of them do. Both deserve the success they've seen, and also deserve the praise they've gotten over the years. By comparing the two, we are doing them both an incredible disservice, considering they are drastically different games. One is as arcade as it gets, while the other is a semi-realistic sim, and both games I've always adored. And that's why I picked to talk about the two games that I did. Tony Hawk, at the time, was slowly starting to slip for me. After playing endless amounts of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, American Wasteland, and Underground, when Project 8 came out, that marked the last game I truly took the time to sit down and sink my teeth into. And it wouldn't be until the release of Skate 3 that revitalized my love for skateboarding video games, and had me wondering how the previous entries would stack up, and I was not disappointed. They released within a year of each other, and we just aren't going to talk about the one that released the same year. But if you don't know anything about either game, let me give you a little side-by-side story comparison. Skate starts us as someone who had just been absolutely fucking obliterated by a bus during a session. And Tony Hawk's Project 8 starts us as a punk kid with a huge ramp made out of wood and trash in our backyard. And here's where they both kinda take the same turn. We are working our way up to being number one by slowly competing challenges, meeting pros, filming, and taking pictures. We want to make it into the team for Tony Hawk's Project 8, collecting as many sponsors as possible, or to eventually try and get on the front cover of Thrasher and Skate Mag, also collecting as many sponsors as possible. And that's where the similarities start and stop, a rough story parallel. There isn't a whole lot you can do, in my opinion, to make the story much more than what it needs to be. It doesn't need to be the most in-depth, gut-wrenching story about how Tony Hawk had his skateboard on life support, and if he just put the little injection in the thing, the skateboard would live. No, it just needs to be fun to play. Looking at the trick system for both games, it's such a huge gap. Yeah, see what I did there? Skate adopts a more sim approach to doing flip tricks and navigating around the world. I may be looking far too much into this, but the system makes so much sense to me that pulling back on the stick is not only the pop the board needs to get off the ground, but could very easily translate into the front and back foot, and controlling those two movements with that in mind. Just looking at the simple tricks as someone who horribly skateboarded most of his childhood, it's rather intuitive. Doing a kickflip, you pop the tail with your back foot, then flick off with your front at an angle. Or a shove it, you do a little scoop, you know? It may not be as in-depth as something like Session System for flip tricks, but in my opinion, it's the right amount of realism versus arcade. Same with going into a grind. There is a subtle little amount of magnetization, but in comparison to this, it makes sense in the same way of a little bit of realism is still fun. We don't have to balance, but we have to position our board, jump at the right time, at the right angle, to lock into whatever grind or slide you want to do. I will forever hold the stance that completing a line in Skate is one of the best feeling things you can do. But jumping over to Project 8, or the Tony Hawk games in general, the system is stripped back to a couple button presses and you point your stick in a specific direction, but that doesn't mean it's not fun. You can speed up by using the stick to just zoom around the map, but holding A or X, depending on the console you're playing on, gets you into the ollie position and also gains you speed like riding around normally would. As soon as you let go of A, you pop yourself into the air, leaving you the choice to do a grab or some flip tricks using X, or a grind by pressing Y and locking into place, which for some bizarre reason gains you speed. It's such a simple system that leaves us with endless possibilities to get million point combos, which is absolutely bonkers. Alongside everybody's go-to trick being an impossible, The game has freestyle skating elements, which I think is a very overlooked but fun part of the sport. Like skateboarding in general, freestyle skating is incredibly technical, but again, how the series handles pretty much everything, it's made super simple and easy to do while balancing and doing a couple of boops and bops on those 3 lovely colorful face buttons. And while doing the films around the map, you just do these tricks over and over again, going for quantity over quality. Having a single line have 13 grabs, 3,160 degrees of spinning, 30 flip tricks, 10 manuals, and 400 feet of grinding, which loses all the want for me to do good looking lines. Unlike in Skate, where we have the ability to do a vast majority of common flip tricks, and it feels satisfying along the trusty session marker to hit a line you've been trying for the last 10 minutes. There are points in these lines, videos, and photos we do, where you haven't hit a certain point objective, which sort of ruins it for me personally. I understand the purpose of trying to push you to do more complex tricks and combos to get your score just that little bit higher, to get that multiplier up. But how they set up the entire idea of doing semi-realistic lines, a kickflip to crook isn't going to cut it. I found myself doing the line I wanted to do, and then at the end sitting in one spot trick spamming in between manuals to artificially boost my score. We have to hit certain quotas as well as the score. That makes it a tad bit more fun, in a sense of looking at what you have to do and finding the perfect spot to do that. We are not locked in one specific spot to film our video parts. We can theoretically do it anywhere, and that kind of brings me to the camera angle in general. In the Tony Hawk series, we are always quite high above or center mass of our skater, and it works well. Leaves us with a good idea of where we and our board is, and probably one of the most intuitive ways for someone to get a hang of skateboarding mechanics in a video game. But in Skate, with good old Rita filming us the entire time, we are quite low and have an angle commonly used in film skating, and it also gives a reason as to why we are doing what we do. I'm not someone who needs a reason to have a functional camera in a video game, but it's novel and fun to have the knowledge that this man is just behind me the entire time. And that also gives some reason as to why we can record video parts anywhere we wish. And aside from camera angles, I kinda just want to talk about the looks of both series. Sticking with Skate, it's much dirtier looking, and keeps the attitude of skateboarding intact, or at least the attitude I remember growing up skating. While on the other side of the spectrum, apart from textures of trash and ran down buildings, the game looks quite clean. There is spray paint all over the place, but it's always quite bright and full of color. While in Skate, it's quite dingy looking and dark. Everything in general is a lot cleaner in a literal sense, from going to gray and brown tidy campuses and shopping centers, to even the spillway being incredibly clean, if not a little overgrown. They also share a lot of the same elements when it comes to music, using a lot of punk rock and hip hop, which were all huge genres at the time, and are still huge genres, even though hip hop eclipses all, but that plays into the attitude of skateboarding. Perceived attitude aside, how many times have I said attitude in 30 seconds, both games look quite nice for coming out in 2006 and 2007 respectively. While messy and pixelated at times, these are early open world games, and with Tony Hawk being dumbed down to also function on the PS2, it looked alright, but I can't say the same for the performance of the game. I never had a frame issue with Skate, but as I unlocked more in Project 8, I got more and more frame problems, making me drop combos or fail tricks that were specifically needed to complete the mission. Of course, it wasn't horrible or unplayable, but I did get annoyed at times. Now, that's a perfect transition into what I want to talk about next, and that's going more in depth on the challenges we do. I talked a little bit about the filming for both games, so we won't go into that for now, but there is so much to do, especially in Tony Hawk. We not only meet pros and have cinematics that show what they're known for and show us some of their most iconic footage, but we get to speak to them, and they either teach us something new, like Rodney Mulling introducing Nail the Trick, or we go toe-to-toe with Nigel Houston and Lindsay Adams, and it's cool to see the pros in this way. And to be honest, Skate handles it pretty similarly, where when we meet a pro, they set a challenge for us, we see a bit of their footage, and either we do a trick they're known for, or we play them in a game of Skate, which at times feels absolutely rigged in our favor when the biggest and best pros just fucking slam on a kickflip, but I mean, I'll take it. Then there are the photo challenges, which also have very similar setups in both games, where we go to a spot, do a specific trick, and boom, we snap some photos. But there's a big plus in Skate's book. because we're able to pick the photo that we want to be used. And even though it really doesn't matter, it's a little extra details that drag me further into the skate experience. The biggest differences are in the jams and the demos. On the Tony Hawk side of things, there's a list of different things that come under this umbrella. We have the regular demos where we go from crowd to crowd doing tricks to get them excited and keeping them engaged, which is so fucking annoying. But then, like I mentioned earlier, we have the quote-unquote own the spot situation between us, Nyjah, and Lindsay. Then there are the huge contests Tony puts on, where we have a vert ramp and have to do the wildest grabs and flips we can to get enough points to move on, just to do the same thing again. But finally we have the pièce de résistance. And for some reason, I can't find the actual name of the activity. Actually, I can't find names on any of them at all, but we have to complete a list of challenges that, if you've got a hold on the controls, can be a lot of fun. Collecting combo or skate, high scores which can easily be done. And even, hold on, I don't think you're ready for this, fucking assault! If everything else you've done wasn't enough to arrest you 1,000 times over, this will definitely have you there in no time. I guess the closest thing I could even think about comparing in skate are the jams or the contests where we either own the spot and try to get the highest scoring single trick on a spot, or get the highest overall score in an actual jam. I think both forms of trick contests have merit. On one hand, Tony Hawk has these huge lists, super fun activities, and on the other hand, skate is simplistic and has the added benefit of competition. I could be completely wrong here. I only remember going head to head with Lindsay and Nyjah, while I can vividly remember spots I went against others on in skate. If I'm wrong, please, future footage comb Tirata, cut me out.
I'm not gonna fucking do that.
Oh, well. Seems like someone's in a bad mood. Oh, that reminds me of the absolutely holy grail of video game mechanics. I mentioned it earlier, the session marker. Trying a line over and over again can be such a slog when you have to run back after breaking your teeth on the curb. And then you don't always get yourself in the exact place you started, then you gotta get the exact spot to try and get the exact speed, and you end up playing for hours going for a line just to spend half of the time running back and forth. But Skate fixed this issue by letting you set a marker and gave us the power to teleport back and continue that way. So Skate wins. I'm sorry. It's over. Skate wins. One last time before I end this video, there's truly no real comparison between the two games. What you enjoy is what you enjoy, and I just so happen to enjoy Skate more than the Tony Hawk games, but I can have just as much fun playing either. It's almost as the whole stupid fight between consoles that has been going on for years, which if you're gonna play a console, Xbox and Microsoft are shit. You know, they shut down 4 studios, and 2 of them, I like them a lot. So, do with that what you will. But it honestly doesn't matter. It's a pointless argument, and this was a pointless ass video. Honestly, I made the video just to have an excuse to play the games again. Play games you want to play, try new ones, or not, I don't really care. Just don't be an ass about it. Okay? Love you! Bye bye!